Did you have a moment in your week where things felt so overwhelming that you felt that there was just no way you could see that it would get done? Maybe you had a moment, maybe you had a week like that. What wisdom can we gain from this week's Torah portion to help us in such moments? So I mentioned before that Mishpatim is the details. It's the more than 50 different mitzvot, the laws of many of them, the relationships between human beings, what happens when we steal, what happens when we buy or sell a slave, what happens when we cause damage, what happens when our animals cause damage, who is responsible. Moses is responsible for teaching these laws to the Jewish people. Jake and his family got to study Mishpatim together with me, and we saw just how complex they are. To do 1 or 2 or 7 would be something. To do 50, to do 613 seems overwhelming. Our Torah portion tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, spends 40 days up on Mount Sinai studying with the teacher of teachers, with God, to understand this Torah that Moses is then responsible for transmitting to the Jewish people. 40 days of, I was going to say 1-to-1, but 1 with a capital O to 1, studying. What an amazing thing to imagine what that must have felt like or been like. The Sfat Emet, the Hasidic master who taught at the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s in Poland, and who's quite unique in Hasidic teachers before his time, because his responsibility in Ger in Poland was not just to Hasidim, but also to Jews who had begun, because of the Enlightenment in Europe, who had begun to leave Judaism or to explore other paths, secular paths out of Judaism. And his teachings speak not only to the Hasidim, but speak to the heart of every Jew. That was his aim. The Sfas Emes talks in this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim, about the number 40. And he points out, as I'm sure many of you do, that 40 is a number that comes up several times in the Torah. For example, 40 years in the desert. The Israelites wandered for 40 years in the Sinai desert. What else? Say it again. Noah's Ark. The rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. And it's not in the Torah, but it's understood in the Talmud that the period that a fetus takes to form into a fetus, from being the thing that becomes a fetus, is 40 days. And the Sfat Emet looks at these connections and says that what was going on Mount Sinai was not just Moses learning Torah. What was going on, just like the fetus is formed in those 40 days, just like the children of Israel became a nation ready to cross over the Jordan River in those 40 days in Sinai, 40 years in Sinai, just like the rain that fell was a giant mikveh to cleanse and transform the world that had been corrupted by Hamas, by corruption and evil. That's the Hebrew word in the Torah. It's not a political commentary. So that 40, the Sfas Emes says, is a number of transformation, of formation and transformation. What was happening on Mount Sinai was not Moses studying Torah. It was Moses creating himself anew, so that he was ready to come down the mountain and be Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, the teacher to the Jewish people. So if we look at this week's Torah portion, as we did, we might feel overwhelmed, mitzvah after mitzvah, law after law. How to understand this, how to explain it. The whole Talmud is needed to explain some parts of Mishpatim. if we understand what the Sfat Emet was teaching, when we study Torah, we step into that world of transformation. When we study Torah, we form ourselves. And when I say study Torah, you might think of being Moses, or you might think of being a yeshiva bocher. You might think of cracking over the Talmud and open the Talmud and sitting down and steiging over the page, which is beautiful, and I invite you to do that. But studying Torah, teaching with a capital T, is something that's available to every person. You need a rabbi, or you need a friend, or you need a Wi-Fi connection and a device, and off you go. You're studying Torah. So when life feels overwhelming, when it feels like there's too much, know that there is a very Jewish remedy for this moment. It's to study. And in that action, according to this Sfas Emes, we begin to form and transform ourselves. So yes, there is medication. Yes, there are long courses of meditation and transformation. But you have available to yourself, any moment of any day, a remedy that has been used for at least 3,500 years for formation and transformation. And I want to invite you in this challenging world that we live in to delve into not necessarily its depths, its shallows and its depths, and to see if there is not something in there to help us in these overwhelming moments. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good Shabbos.